Hello, I'm Katherine Artines. Welcome to this video where we explore some of the fun additions you'll find when you install the newest update 9.55. The first new tool is another example of you asked, we answered. We have now been given a nap blocker stitch. Its purpose is to block the nap or pile on fabric such as terry cloth, fleece, or texture that is pokey. A real technical term there. It creates a foundation for the embroidery. With the nap being blocked, you won't need to use a film or topper over the texture like we have done in the past. It is a one-click feature. Let's put a monogram on the screen. Using our monogram tool, clicking on our screen, we come up with ABC. Since this design will end up on a towel, we'll choose a substantial font. The thin cursive ones don't stand out very well. Coming up to our text window, we'll click on that. I'm looking for the monogram fishtail. Happens to be right next to what I'm working with. Let's size it. I'll choose my select tool, come over here and rest on the text window so that I can check the recommended sizes. I see that the maximum height range recommended is 2.36, so I'm going to size this by dragging one of the handles to about 2 1/4. I'm watching the very lower left corner of my screen as I drag, indicating this size. That looks good. We'll go ahead and right-click, put it in the center, and drop that down just a bit so we can see it better. We'll go ahead and change to red. You know me, I like my realistic preview on. All you need to do for this new feature is to have your design selected, right-click, and we see that we've been given a new heading called Utility. Under that utility, we have our new feature called Create Nap Blocker. Once we click on it, we see that behind the font, we're given an area of complex fill about 4 millimeters larger than the design. It really is that simple. Let's try it again. This time we'll add a design. One of the free ones that we have. Coming up to Text Designs, using our drop-down, we'll go into Monogram Designs, and I'm choosing this scroll in the upper right corner. A double click will bring it to screen. I'll drag it into position, and I'm going to size it just a little bit. And then, again, bring that into position. Once again, we do a right-click under Utility, come down to Create Nap Blocker, click on that, and we see that that nap blocker area has been placed behind our scroll. You may be familiar with this concept. Perhaps you've heard it referred to as a knockdown stitch or maybe a background frame. Perhaps those terms were confusing to you if you don't know what they do. But our term, nap blocker, is very explanatory. Its name tells you exactly what it's going to do. It blocks the nap from coming through the embroidery on top of it. One of the other beauties about our feature is that we can edit that area. We have complete control in our property box. You see that the lower nap blocker is chosen, and up in Properties, it is a complex fill in the tatami pattern. And notice too that the density is 1 millimeter, and this is what makes it work. The beauty of this is that we can control the density. If our towel or fabric has a very high nap, if we think it needs to be denser, we could come up here and lower that density. Remember, the lower the number, the closer the threads will be together. We'll do an apply, and you see the change apply on screen. Or if we want to lighten that up a bit, we could go a little higher to maybe 1.2 millimeter and apply, and we have less density. Again, the beauty is that we have control. We can also go into our transform and change the size. I did say that the nap blocker comes in by default at approximately 0.4 millimeter away from your design. Here, the size is showing in inches, but I could up that to maybe a 3.5 and apply, and I see that that area has gotten larger. So this is one of the beauties of our new nap blocker, is that we can control the density, the size. Actually, I could even come back and change from tatami to maybe a smooth or zigzag, again, depending on what the towel or the actual nap is on the fabric that's being used. Let's take a look at the thread colors. Do you notice that each of the nap blocker areas have come in with the first thread color, in this case blue? Also in sequence view, we see that each nap blocker area is placed immediately above the item from which it was created, and that's very logical. Speaking of logic, let's think through our project. In this case, a towel. Doesn't it make sense to have both nap blocker areas done under one color stop on our embroidery machine? And chances are we would want this nap blocker to stitch out first because it's leveling the nap for us and allows the decorative stitching to rest on top. So before we save our design, we would want to do an edit, resequence by color. Here we have the blue of the nap blocker above the red monogram, again the blue of the nap blocker above the yellow scroll. We come over to Edit, come down to Resequence by Color. Looking again in sequence view, we see that both of those nap blocker areas, those complex fill, have been placed at the top of our list, which means they will stitch out first. Something else to make note. If we decide to play with the sizing of the monogram or the scroll, let's go ahead and choose the yellow scroll, and if I decide I want to size that even a little larger than it is, we see that yes, the scroll has sized, but no, the nap blocker area did not. What we want to do instead, we have choices here, but in this case I would select both of those areas, the scroll and the nap blocker, and then I could size as desired. I'll go ahead and undo that. My other option would be to come up here and group both of those, and then I could play with the position and perhaps the vertical flip. Whatever I'd want to do, I'm doing to both of those areas. I'll go ahead and ungroup and put it back where I had it, because the other option that we could do is to create all of our design first and then apply the nap blocker once we're finished. I'll go ahead and select the monogram and the scroll. I'm going to come up here and do a copy, paste, drag over here to the side. I do want to select the yellow scroll and group that, and this way I could play and position and size all of the parts of my design as I would like to do that. Then once finished, I could select both of those, right click, come to Utility, come down to Create Nap Blocker, and you see in this instance I have applied the nap blocker area to the entire design. So really it is joined right here in this area, as opposed to having both of these separate. There's no right or wrong here, it just depends on the look that you're after on your project. If you want those particular designs closer together, it might make more sense for you to do that and select all of them and then apply your nap blocker, as opposed to having them separate. We're going to borrow this particular one. We'll go ahead and do a copy, clean screen, paste it on our screen, right click, center origin. I do like my 3D on. I'm going to drop that back to be 100% so it's not so much in our face. And one of the things now to talk about is at this point that nap blocker might look way too conspicuous on the screen, and in this color, this blue, it does. But when you stitch it, you'll want to match your thread color to the towel or fleece for the nap blocker to blend in. We'll take a look at other samples here. The nap blocker is not supposed to be a design element. It is a utility stitch, which means it's doing a job for us. Here we see that all of these nap blockers have been done in thread that matches the towel. If you are on your screen and you want to get a better feel of what that nap blocker will look like, we do have some features that we can play with. First of all, let me select the blue nap blocker and I'm going to change it to a green. Then come down here in the lower right of your screen to where we can change the background color. And I might then want to pick a soft green. That gives me a more realistic feel of what that nap blocker is going to look like on my project. So do remember that you have those at your fingertips. Let's take a look again at these towels. Whereas these projects came out quite nice, take a look at this one. There are variables involved in your projects. In this case, the most important variable is the towel. This brown towel is a quality heavy terry, but not new. This is a great example as to the importance of doing test stitch outs. If I'm giving embroidered towels as gifts, I always try to buy one extra hand towel on which to practice. We see here on the left that the first stitch out was not good. We need to see what went wrong with that and do it again, make those changes so that we produce a better sample on our test. Other variables would be our thread weight and bobbin thread. I generally try to match my bobbin thread with the top thread so it looks nice from the back side. And 2, I would use a size 12 sharp needle. What did I do to fix this particular stitch out? We'll come back into PEP. I'll go ahead and put my screen back to white. OK that, and then I'm going to open a file that I have started for us so you can see the changes I made. On the left is the original stitch out, the one that was not a good sample, and then the changes that I made over on the right. If we take a look at the nap blocker, you see here in properties that the density is that default 1.0 millimeter. Also, if I select the letter itself and go into density, I see that I have decreased the density to a 0.4. If I come over to my fixed design, the one that turned out a very nice sample, I see in that nap blocker I have decreased the number of the density. Again, I have made those threads closer. We can also see that I've changed the density in my letter to a 0.3. So those were 2 of the things that I corrected from my test stitch out, which allowed me to have a much better stitch out on the exact same towel. While we're talking about towels, here's a quick review of the hooping process. I use water-soluble self-adhesive stabilizer in a snap hoop monster. And even if my towel is not velour, I still use that magnetic hoop for ease of hooping with such thickness. Another tool you see me using here is my favorite PAL, the Perfect Alignment Laser. Even though I'm doing a simple embroidery here, I still use it in my hooping process. I've talked mostly about using this new nap blocker feature with towels, but it is also for almost anything with a nap or a pile. Again, fleece, certain types of knits, minky, those types of things. Here's another sample I did. The black circle has the nap blocker behind it. I wanted a polka dot look to match my other towels. Let's take a look at how I did this. Again, back in PEP, I'm going to open a design that I already have started for us. You can see the elements here that I used, the letter A and then a big black polka dot. I'll click on the letter A. You can see that it is the font called Mono 20. I also have changed the density to a 0.3. With the black circle, the black is a tatami. Its density is a 0.4. I wanted to show you one of the other things I did with this particular towel. I'm going to click on the letter A and drag it to position where I wanted it in the circle. And normally I would select both of those and come up and do a center align. But in this case, because the letter A is sort of asymmetrical, I'm not thrilled with the way that that letter looks. So I went ahead and change the center of that letter A on my polka dot. So I like that look better. What I did before I applied the nap blocker is I want to select my letter, do a right click, come down to our new heading utility, and then to our remove overlap. This is not a new feature to us. We've used it many times in our videos, but again, what happens there is it's going to take out that heavier thread underneath my letter A. I'll do an undo to put it back in position. Now that I have my design as I wish, and I know that I'm going to be stitching it on something with a nap, in this case a textured towel, I will select all, right click, utility, and create that nap blocker. And you can see that it has placed that circle behind my black polka dot, again about a 0.4 millimeter away from my black circle. It's showing in blue. I'll just leave it in blue so that you can see it, but of course I stitched it to match my towel. We'll go back into our picture. If you look closely, do you see right here? can see it a little better here on this edge than on the bottom. But this is where the nap blocker has stitched. It stitched first. I stitched it in white so it blended in with the white towel, and then I finished the design with the polka dot and the lettering. And you can see how fun that looks on my towels. Remember, you have all kinds of tools in your PEP toy box, like this really cool new feature, Create Nap Blocker. Like all of our other features, we use a specific tool or feature or command when it is appropriate to do so. Let's put some designs on the screen. We'll come up to our text designs, click on a button. 2 clicks will get us down to our parrot, our perched parrot, and we'll drag him over. I think we'll come up to about a 200% so we can see things a little easier. Go back into our text designs. 2 clicks will get me there. I'll bring in his flying buddy. We see both of those birds on the screen. Come over to sequence view. They are both grouped, but if we expand these, you can see that any part of our bird, we have numerous runs and sattens in each of those parts. The new filter allows us to show certain types of design sections all at once. I don't need to select them. In fact, it doesn't matter if you do or don't, as filter applies to the entire screen. Let's do a right click. You'll see a new heading called View, under which we see our Show All, Hide All, but a new one called Filter. This dialog box comes up on the screen, allowing us to choose those portions or objects that meet our criteria. In this case, I'm going to choose satin and do an OK. You see that's all I am seeing on my screen are the satin portions. Take a look over in sequence view and you see all of the runs grayed out and the satins themselves are all showing in all of the different parts. If I were to expand any of these, you'll see that satin showing in all. Now, one of the beauties of this, with just the satin showing on the screen, I can now click and drag to select all of those satins, come over here into my properties, and I can put in my 0.3 for my density and apply. What that means is I did not have to go into my sequence view and select each one of these satins individually to increase that density. I was able to do it in all of one selection. To bring it back, we're going to do a right click, a view, and a show all. Now I see all parts of my designs, but yet those satins have been affected to have the increased density that I wanted. We'll try another. New screen. This time we'll come over to our library tab. I'll come up to Perfect Embroidery Pro Free Designs. Here are those designs shown in the display window. This one's easy for us to play with. I'll click and drag our bulldozer on screen, turn on my 3D. Once again, if we want to do that filter, I can do a right click, view, filter, and maybe this time I want to see the run stitches, and I'll go ahead and OK that. I don't always need to do something to the filtered area. Perhaps I just wanted to see how much run stitch is under all of that satin. So I look at that and see that it's going to give it a very good foundation when that stitches out. We don't do our undo to bring it back. Rather, we do a right click, view, show all. We'll try one more. Again, I'm still in the library over here. I'm going to scroll down to find my rows, click and drag that to screen, turn on my 3D. Again, I can do a right click, view, filter. The rose is selected. Remember, it does not have to be. I'm going to take a look at the satin and do an OK. And here are the satin stitches in that design. Right click, view, show all. Right click, view, filter, and this time let me take a look at the run stitches, and I see that I have quite a number of them. Let's say that I want to move forward and have this more of an artsy look. I might want to come over here to sequence view, and I'm looking at just the runs. I'll select that area and delete it, and that gives me a very fun look here. Let's scroll down and I will choose this red, hit the delete on my keyboard, and you can see that we have different look to our rose, a little bit more artsy than the original heavier, dense rose. With this fun look on screen, I can select all of that, do a copy, come into a new screen, paste, take a look at that. Let's come over to sequence view. If I expand any of these, you see that I have just brought over the run stitches, but at this point I could do a file save as and save this as rose art and go ahead. I have a brand new design based on this original rose that we were given as part of our free designs. So lots of fun that you can have. Filter can be a utility, but it can also help you create some fun, different looks. When talking about filter, we need to also refresh ourselves about another feature called Convert to Outline. If I do an open, I want you to pay attention right here to this feature called Convert to Outlines, and you can see that it has a check mark in it. I'm going to go ahead and open up an existing machine format design, in my case a PES because I have baby lock machines, and we look at this design, go back into sequence view, and if I expand these, you can see manuals, runs, satins, and so forth for each of the different sections or objects of this design. We'll do this again. We'll do an open, but this time I'm going to remove the check mark of Convert to Outlines. Go ahead and open that exact same design and take a look at it. We will do a right click to expand all, and here you see the difference. When that check mark is removed from the opening of a design, we can see that it treats that design differently. 99% of the time, you're going to want that check mark in your box. You can see that the check mark is not there. Whatever you have done, in this case I put the check mark back, it is going to stay checked until I come back at some other future time and remove that check mark. You're going to want to have that check mark in there. We've been given this option to uncheck for those people who need to work with an expanded design file, and that's one where the individual stitches in a design have been specifically digitized for a certain size, more for commercial use. This type of design doesn't react well to being sized over 20%. I wanted to bring this to your attention here when we talk about filter, just in case you have a situation where your filter is not working as you think it should. You want to make sure that you have that check mark Convert to Outlines. All right, we'll go ahead and cancel. One other thing about our filter, if we do, we'll come back into our design where we have all of the individual pieces here. If I again do filter, a right click, view, filter, and I ask it for something, in this case let's say a complex fill, and do an OK, and I get nothing on the screen, that's because there were no areas of that particular choice. And you can see over here in sequence view everything is grayed out because I asked for something that is not there. Again, right click, view, show all, and I have my design back on screen. You'll like this next new feature if you work with your fabric images a lot. We'll bring up a clean screen. I'm going to go into our text designs arrow, bring up applique shapes, look for my Santa's hat, Christmas 03. I'll size that down just a little bit for fun. Turn on my 3D. Coming over to our properties for this applique, our second one in line is fabric. And one of our additions in our new update are these slider bars. We've always had the ability to do the scale and the changes to the offset, but now we can do so easily with a slider bar. We'll go ahead in fabric and choose one. I'll come under my Moda and use 12 Days of Christmas and bring up one with some stockings and so forth, and we see our fabric placed into our applique. If we wanted to sort of fussy cut or make sure that a particular portion of this design is going to fit on an area in our applique, I'm going to come over here and play with the choices that I have. The first thing I'm going to do is to rotate it to 180 so it turns around, and here we have some stockings. There is one slightly in the ball of my hat. So if I want to play with my X and Y axis, I can move that stocking over a bit and play with the up and down, and I see that that hat is just large enough for that stocking to be placed right there. So if I would like to size that hat ever so slightly to see just a little bit more of that fabric in there, I can do that and play. But again, those slider bars are the addition. This next new feature is more for the advanced user. You may have noticed it already under our new utility heading when we do our right-click shortcut menu. I'm going to open a design that I've started with us. It's similar to what we were just playing with, but it's fresh. I've made no changes to the satin stitches and so forth. With our change style feature, you can select one, all, or faded objects in a design and change how it sews out in a few clicks. To refresh, with our Click to Stitch feature, we'll come up here to File, Click to Stitch. This is our feature that lets us modify a design to fit the fabric types of choice. It is a global feature, meaning that it applies to all of the design objects on the page. Here we would start by choosing our fabric of choice. I'm going to say we're going to put this on a sweatshirt, so we'll do a next. I have all of these changes set with a check mark by default. You do need to hit this apply button. If you forget to do that, no changes will be made. Yes, it is a C2S format. We'll go ahead and do a next. Here are the recommendations for hooping and stabilizing for this project. I'll do a finish. It does want me to name this design. I'll just give it a couple Z's here. Now take a look, please. The stitches themselves are 8513. Our originals were 6740. So it did make some changes to those designs, making them a little heavier for our sweatshirt. Now let's say in looking at this sweatshirt, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to add portions of this as an applique. Once again, going under my text designs, applique, I'm going to double click the bucket, which I think looks more like a cup, and I'm going to size it down, drag into position, see if it's sized appropriately for my perched parrot, maybe a little smaller here, and I'll drag into position. And again, we're just playing, so I can show you some differences with that. I also would probably want to pick my flying parrot, so I'm going to come over here to my sequence view. Because he is not grouped, I'm going to select all of those portions with my Shift key and come up to group him so that I can move him and maybe put him in a fun position on this cup. But see how his feet go behind the applique? I want the applique to stitch first. So I'll come over here to sequence view, select that cup, and then come up to my move to make it stitch out first. And now my parrot in flight is going to land on the edge of that cup. All right, what I'm trying to show you here is the ability for your change style that you can treat designs differently from each other. So this bird, our flying parrot, will be on the sweatshirt, which we've already changed with our Click to Stitch global feature. But this little perched parrot will be on cotton in the middle of our cup. So I'm going to select our perched parrot. I want to make sure that he is grouped also. But notice now he is the only one that is selected. Our stitch count is 9849. I'll do a right click. I'm going to come down to Utility, come down to Change Style. Here my standard is set to normal. I'm going to come in, and putting him on quality cotton will make it be a woven medium smooth. I'll click on that and OK. I have altered him only. My parrot in flight is the same as necessary for my sweatshirt, but I have altered the parrot. He will be stitching on cotton. You can also see that the stitch count has changed to 9513. So this is one of the beauties of our change style, that you can go in and just certain parts of your design can be altered with a particular style. Now I did it project oriented, but you certainly could do it if you find some differences on your stitch out and you want to make some changes specific to that stitch out, whatever that project fabric might be. You can come in and isolate portions of a design with that change style. Let's continue to play with change style. I'll bring up a clean screen and I'm going to go into our text designs, monogram designs, and bring to screen this diamond, the 17483. You may have noticed that there was another choice when we're playing with style. Turn on my 3D so you can see this design, very pretty as is. But if I do a right click, come down to utility and change style, whereas we just played under standard, you also have a special style and you see vintage 15. Under it, we have two choices for vintage, the 15 and the 40, which is referring to the weight of the thread available in vintage. This feature was added for registered users of both Perfect Embroidery Pro and Dime Vintage. We're going to choose the 15 and OK it, and it applies the vintage look to this particular design. Now, let me go back and do an undo, and you notice that the stitch count is 2339. If I do a redo, we change it back to vintage, we see that that is changed a bit to 2373. What's actually happening here is it has applied the vintage design type to this particular monogram design. Let's take a deeper look as to what has happened here in this style change. We see that the design is grouped, selected and ungroup it so that we can see all of the pieces and parts that make up this particular diamond, a number of runs and satins. If I click on just one of the satins, you'll see what we have in properties, that the fill type has been changed to whipped and the pattern is regular edges. That's what make it look like the Dime Vintage designs. If I want to make a change to all of these satins, I can also use my filter. I'll do a right click, view, come back into our filter feature. I want to choose all of the satins. So again, all of the satins, none of the runs, and do OK. Just the satins are selected. I will go ahead and select all of them and come over here to my properties and change the pattern from regular edges to irregular edges and apply. There's just a slight difference there, but it's kind of funky. I like the edges of that. So we've used our filter. Again, we'll do a right click, view, show all. The design is back as it should be, and we have a very fun look to this diamond. I probably would finish it off with a monogram in the middle. We'll drag that and place that into the middle as is, and there we have a very fun design. Again, it is for those of you who own both Perfect Embroidery Pro and Vintage. I am going to give you a word of caution. This vintage style should not be applied to just any design. If we come into a clean screen, I go back into my text designs and scroll down a bit and bring up these birds. They are in more of a satin complex fill. I'm going to ungroup them so that I can select the middle bird and do a right click, come into utility, change my style, choose the special, and OK. I'll go ahead and change that color so it stands out a bit. But this would not be an appropriate design to change to vintage. First of all, it's small, and it was a very dense design with lots of stitches. And whereas it's removed some of them, we still have a lot of line stitch under there. Let me show you what I'm talking about, again, using our new filter tool. Right-click View, Filter. I want to take a look at just the run stitches and OK it. You see here in the orange, the one that we have changed to the vintage, there are all of these run stitches, and that would not be appropriate to use with a vintage style. That vintage 15 rope thread is very thick, and you're just going to make this design too heavy and too many stitches on top of each other. We'll do a right-click View, Show All, put that back. This would not be an appropriate design. However, we have done an appropriate design with our frame because this is very light and airy, and it was not a filled design to start with. So, with this word of caution, I want you to make logical choices when you want to turn something into a vintage style. Again, this is appropriate. The birds would not be appropriate. All right, you need some logic there, but it is very fun. Once in a new screen, we'll play with our last new feature in our update 9.55. It is called projection. Let me first show you what this design will look like. This new feature spoke to the artsy-tartsy in me. You can see that we have very different look with our threading. It might look complicated, but it is very easy to create something that looks like this. We're going to bring some artwork up on our screen just to play with, to show you some different looks that you have. I'm just going to click and drag some different shapes that we have. We'll do a triangle. Just something fun so that you can see what we're playing with. We'll have a star here, and certainly some hearts are fun to play with. We'll do a couple different ones so that you can see. All right, just some artwork shapes up on your screen. I'm going to select all of them in sequence view, and our new feature is found under Run. So I need to do a right click, convert to Run, come over here to our properties, click on the drop down for standard, and you see it right here, projection. We'll go ahead and apply, and you see all of these fun looks to the shapes that we've just played with on screen. If I change some of the shapes themselves, for example, I might want to take this particular one, size it differently, and I'm also going to come into my shape tool so that right here at the point of this heart, I'll do a right click. I want to split that line. When you play with projection, you're going to notice that there are differences. You'll get different looks depending on the stops and start positions. When I have an open figure versus a closed figure, again, different looks. If I take a point and I play with it and drag it out and apply, again, different looks with our horizontal vertical lines. And perhaps I come over and reach over an existing point and apply, and you can see how very fun this becomes when you are playing. There is no right or wrong here. You may play until you get the look that you want. Let me drag out this point just a little bit, and I'm going to do a right click, make that a smooth, and apply, and you can see our differences. Again, drag that point just to be something fun and funky. I had that apply, and you can keep going and making different looks to your shapes. Also, when you play, you can control let me get my select tool back. You can control the density of a design. I'm going to copy paste this heart so you can make the comparison here. The default is a 1.5 density. We can certainly make that smaller. Maybe I'd like that as a 1 and apply, and you can see your threads closer together. They're tighter up in here. Let me turn on that 3D so you can see the actual look we're going to get. Also, we can make that larger. Remember, default was 1.5. If I make that a 2.2 and apply, you see the differences there between our default. So fun all the way around. I'm going to open up a design that I have started so I can show you some other choices that you have. You may remember that flower. When I was going to create that, I wanted to play with the petals and the look that I might want. And here you see this is just an oval that I created depending on whether the design was open or closed, where the starting point was. We can see what is happening in the design. In this red one, you see the start position down here at the bottom. In the blue, it is at the top. And to get this very interesting look here, two things going on. First of all, look at the bottom. This is an open design, whereas these two were closed. And also, we have a very cool spiral effect going down the center here. And that is done with a loop-de-loop kind of idea. Let me back out and I'll show you how I did that. It's very fun. We'll take a artwork tool pen and I will simply recreate that, give a couple of points, and here I'm going to make my loop-de-loop. Come back to the top here. Not ideal, but I'm going to leave that open and I'll right click to end it. Select, go into my points, actually I want all of those made into a right click smooth, and then come over, right click, convert to run, and to my type, make that projection and apply, and you can see I have that really cool circle in the middle. I will open the design that I showed you and we'll take a closer look as to how this one was done. I have used some of the symbols that you already have. I showed you how I made this spiraled petal effect. The center is just a circle. Here we have a rectangle with points played with and a diamond. You can see that I've played with some points in this fashion, dragged one all the way out. But with the blue, this is simply a cloud that has been split. It is not a closed design. Here with my butterfly, this is also an open design. Where I found these two, I love all of these shapes that are built in. Here's my butterfly, way too large, so I'll bring him over here. Drag him more to size. I did a couple of things here. A right click, convert to artwork, and then with my points, let me zoom in so you can see better what I'm doing. And then with my points, I did a right click and I split that line so that this is open. Now, coming back out, I can select it, right click, convert to run, come over to type, projection, apply. This was a little dense for me, so I think I bumped it up to like a 3 and apply, and you can see how I got that butterfly. The same with the cloud. He is also into applique shapes, alphabetical order here. Here's my cloud, brought him to screen, right click, convert to artwork. Now I'm going to bring up the points, split right here, right click, split line, brought that up just a little bit, and I think that I also took all of this and dragged him out, little odd, right click, convert to run, come over to my type, change him to projection and apply, and I definitely played with the density there. I'll go ahead and try that 3 and see if I like it. But now you can tell how I got that look for the cloud. So even though that might look like I know how to draw, I like to go in and use existing shapes. Let me show you another sample of what I have started for you, and this is something that I would like you to try. I already have this design started for us. I'll click on that show background and you can see the butterfly that I've chosen. If we need a review as to where I have that, I went under Backdrop Tool, came into my hard drive, dime folder, images, bitmaps is where I'm resting. Here is that butterfly right here and brought that to screen. What I did to save a little bit of time is I digitized the body of our butterfly, but I want to show you here you don't have to know how to draw from scratch. We can use the images that we are given and play with them with our new tool. Let's come up here to artwork. I'll get my pen. I'm going to do this on my own with no magic wand. I'll start with the lower wings, click in the point, and I'm just going to click on the sides, at the arc, in the sides, and now I'm going to use my key, the letter C, C as in cat, and I'll hit that and it automatically closed my design. I'll do this one over here, slightly different. I'll do a click, again in those same points, one on the side, one in the arc, the other on the side, but this time I'm going to have an open design, so I won't use the letter C on the keyboard, but instead I'll click my ending point, right click to end. Now I have those two wings. Let me come over here to my backdrop and turn that off. We'll first come up and get our select tool. I will do my points, select all of those points, do a right-click smooth. I'll leave this particular wing as in line points, and remember this is closed. Let me select both of these pieces of artwork. I am going to change the color so we can see it differently. Right-click, convert to run is my first step. Come over to properties, do my drop down, choose projection and apply, and you can see the two different looks that I have for what we've drawn, or in this case traced. The one on the right has the straight line points and is closed. The one on the left has those points made to smooth, and it is an open design, which gives me a little bit thicker area right in there. If I turn on our 3D, you can see that better. All right, let me bring back up our artwork. Again, we'll go get our pen. I will click on these points. That's what makes this artwork trace so very fun. And again, no right or wrong here. You can be as specific as you want to. I'm going to click and then hit the letter C on the keyboard to close that up. I'll do the other wing, and here I'm going to do some of those loop-de-loops. So there's my point. I'll click here, go into this curve, and now I'm coming into the wing itself and giving myself that little loop-de-loop, setting my points. Again, another little loop-de-loop, and that loop-de-loop really requires 3 points. Click back on that one and then finish up the wing. And again, I'm going to leave that wing open so we can see the difference. A right click to end. I have that set to green. We'll go ahead and turn off our artwork. Get the points tool. I'm going to change all of these. Right click, smooth. And now I will select both of my wings. Right click, convert to run. Come over to our type, set that to projection and apply, and you can see how fun our butterfly looks. Those little loop-de-loop corkscrews are very easy to do, and it really makes a fun look if we go back into our picture of what I stitched out. This is one of those features that's just plain fun, and please experiment with it. There is no right or wrong to what you end up with. You're just seeing how it works. Please go back and do the butterfly wings as I did, or move your points around to see what you get. So, some really cool features in this newest update. Some, like the nap locker and filter, make our job of creating and editing easier. Those like projection just challenge the kid in each of us to simply play. You may have seen this before in one of my previous videos, but it is one of my all-time favorite quotes. Play is the highest form of research. And of course, I take that to heart from Mr. Einstein. Have fun with these new features. Thanks for joining me. Enjoy!